I put in work, a lot of work. Got on my grind to make it work. I put in time to ease my mind. Now all the time I see dollar signs. I got the juice and barbecue. Yeah, I keep making moves, cause I know what to do, I put in work.
Welcome back to another episode of Network+Chill. Today we are honored to have a great guest with us today, Alex West Steinman. Alex is a co-founder and the CEO of the Coven, a network of digital and physical spaces for radical change makers. She is dedicated to economic empowerment and advancement of women, non-binary, and trans folks through leadership development opportunities within the Coven. Prior to the Coven, Alex held positions of communications director for an advertising agency, Fallon, and political candidates in the Twin Cities. Leading PR and communication strategy and execution, she gets joy from telling stories of underestimated communities. Alex has also been recognized for her inclusive work locally and nationally, including by the Forbes as a member of its next 1,000 list, and by Amex is for its 100 list. She has also been a recipient of the Minneapolis-St. Paul Business Journal 40 Under 40, and was also the 2019 Bush Fellow. So please welcome to the show, Alex West Steinman.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here. Hi.
Great to have you. We're really honored to have you. I know we got connected at 3686 this year down in Nashville, and really was inspired by the work you're doing in Minneapolis. And so really to kick off the conversation today, we'd love to hear some of your background and your origin story, and how, really talking today about communities, how that kind of led you to start the Coven.
Yeah, that's a great question. Our story starts just like any other entrepreneurs, right? You see a problem and you want to solve it. And when I say we, because there's 4 co-founders of the Coven, I'm one of 4. We all worked in the advertising industry, and as women, we were just constantly met like brick walls everywhere, trying to advance in our careers. As a parent, I can remember like pumping in a closet, like trying to feed my baby. I can remember like arguing over maternity leave days, and never feeling like the space that I was working in, which is where I spent the majority of my time, my life, right? I spend more time with my coworkers and in another environment than I did my home and my partner. And so, having met those kinds of like barriers over and over again, and not seeing myself in leadership, I just we all kind of realized that around the same time that, if we wanted to see real change in the workforce, we were going to have to change the environment. And that's really where the idea for the Coven came, which was, how do we create a space where people can step into their economic power, where people can shed their armor, where people can feel like they have, like they belong in a space, like the space was built for them. And so we are open to all genders. Our community is extremely diverse in age, race, industry, socioeconomics. But we really focus all of our programming and kind of the design of the space around the experiences of women, non-binary, and trans folks, which is kind of our experiences as 4 women. And we've been just so honored to hold space for a community. We've been around since 2017 and have 2 locations in the Twin Cities and are growing via franchising. So it's been a real ride, obviously having a convening space in the middle of COVID. I'm sure we'll talk about that too. But in the beginning, it was all about, how do we create a space where community feels welcome? And we really tested that kind of concept via crowdfunding. And so we crowdfunded $350,000 before we even had a physical space open, just to see, do people want this? And clearly, people said yes, it has to exist. And we had 150 founding members when we opened our door.
That's super exciting. I think there's a couple of points I really want to get into, especially that crowdfunding piece you just mentioned. One of the things that struck me when we were talking in Nashville a little bit was the concept of a workplace versus a community. And you really tapped into the community. What were some of the early maybe research or insights where you was like, this space is around community and not necessarily a workplace?
Yeah, well, I think at the beginning we were really, honestly, kind of averse to the word co-working. And I don't know if it was just because WeWork was, relatively new in the Midwest, and people were like talking about this new kind of co-working thing, and we were like, co-working felt at the time like so bro. It felt so like tech centered and tech driven, and was very specific to a very small population, right? It was like four men in tech, four white men in tech, and that was really like what we knew about co-working at the time. And so we stopped calling it co-working. We started with calling it a community. And when we were first doing that research, we were hosting what we call witching hours, where we would host kind of like focus groups under the guise of like free wine and cheese for people, and like tested out what would it be like to like gather in community with people who are different than you and have an experience together, and have a conversation about workplace inclusivity, which again, like 5 years ago, people weren't talking about that. And so it was kind of a unique, I think we kind of hit the right time, right, for this type of conversation about what is it like to gather. Social media, like on the rise, like as much as it like connects us across, the world, it also has created like silos of people, through all the algorithms. It also like makes us feel disconnected and, disconnected from reality. And so that kind of like IRL type connectivity has been, people have been craving that. And then you marry COVID to that, and people are like even more interested in gathering together. So I don't know. I think from the very beginning, we really wanted to understand what do people need out of community space, and without having that kind of community space to lean on, we actually like just created it in our living rooms to host those initial focus groups, to ask those direct questions of what do you want out of a space that would be built for you. And most people told us, were really frank with us and said, like, I don't know that I've ever felt like I deserved a space like this, or I've never even, how do you explain, like my co-founder Bethany says this, like, how do you explain a color to somebody that doesn't exist? Like, how do you talk about something that, isn't reality for them, a space where you belong. And if you don't feel like you belong anywhere, how do you explain that feeling? And so we had to create that. And that's what we did through a series of events and programming, lots of, thousands of coffees. I feel like I was very over caffeinated in 2017. It was a great time to be a founder and really figure out, what do we want to build? And again, when we built it, it was truly with community, with their input, with their, funding and investment, and fully with their support.
I really love that idea of like building it and calling it a community, because I mean, the best companies feel like family, when you go to work. And I feel like with us being remote and so fragmented now, we struggle to, one, find that community and family within our companies, our jobs. And then even on top of that, we don't want to talk about, some of these things that are political, at work. I think we had an interview with, was it Stacey Wade, that said, like, how many people at your job do you really love? Like you probably have one coworker that you are really close to. But outside of that, you don't have that community feel at work. But if you can go to a space where you have like these political views or whatever that kind of align with the folks, and you can kind of have those conversations and like build that true community while you're still doing your job, that's so much more impactful and meaningful, when I show up to this space. So I love that idea. And it sounds like some of the origins of how we started Network+Chill, to build and find that inclusive space. So like, that's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's exactly how it came together. It was, very much kind of organic conversations and wanting to make sure that we're building something that people want, right? And I think, you brought something up around kind of how like our workplaces, how many people do you actually love in your workplace? Well, when we think about gathering spaces like 50 to 75 years ago, it was like the church was like where people were gathering, or like their religious affiliations were like where community was. And over time, like we've gotten away from that, and especially like young people like leaving their religious affiliations or leaving like their traditional kind of religion, and in kind of that community sense. And in that, they still need community. It might just not be in those, or traditional environments. And so they've now relied on their workplace to become that.
Yep.
And, you know, when work doesn't feel like a place of belonging and, you know, it's, you know, happy hours all the time and like those types of things that like don't work for everyone, right? Those don't always work for parents. They don't always work for women. They don't always work for folks of color. So how do we make sure that, you know, that there's community somewhere? It's the reason why like breweries exist, right? Like people want like a gathering place for like,
Yep.
you know, it's less about the beer and more about like the place where you can sit at a big table with all of your friends. So co-working spaces, I think, came along in this time where people are searching for that space of connectivity, maybe not even in relation to their work, but in relation to like proximity and you know, needing a place to convene. I think COVID in particular, like really exacerbated that need for connectivity. And we're seeing that on the back end of COVID now as people are re-entering the workforce in a hybrid nature and are really looking for flexible workplaces.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
really,
So
really good.
that's
Go ahead, Ricky. No, I was saying that's really
whatever.
good, but yeah, go ahead, Ricky. What's your question?
Yeah, and I was going to say, yeah. So you talked about the early beginnings, the fundraising. Like you all raised 350,000 before you even had a brick and mortar. Like, how did you all kind of like do that? And like how how did that? What did you learn from that? And how did that lead into kind of your next steps?
Yeah, well, I didn't want to crowdfund when we started because I had done it before for other brands. Having come from advertising, like I knew how challenging it was. I knew I had seen founders, you know, try and fail. You know, I had worked with folks who were very well known and, you know, they raised like $1,000. And then I had raised, you know, I'd worked with people who were not well known at all and had raised like millions of dollars, but couldn't fulfill the product. And so like I knew the challenges that came with all of that. And I was really resistant to it. But we didn't qualify for bank funding. We didn't qualify for anything really. You know, we were too early for VC or, you know, investments. Obviously, it's like super high capital intensive in the beginning of a physical space. And so that was really challenging for folks to get their heads around. And so we had to go the crowdfunding route. It was the only way for us to like prove, you know, really have proof of concept. And so you know, we went about it. The good news is all four of us come from marketing, which is exactly what crowdfunding needs is
Yes,
marketing, and you
absolutely.
know, advertising in the network. And so we really worked our network and every time we would host events, we would ask people that we know to bring people we don't know. And so it would be really intentional outreach to communities that, you know, we hadn't connected with yet and wanted to make sure that we were getting as much input as possible, as well as exposing ourselves to as many people as possible, from different backgrounds and industries. So what was really helpful was that, and that we had four folks who were working every day, reaching out. We had this like rule. It was like, you have to reach out to 10 people every single day, and connect with them. I'll tell you one like sad story. We call it Sad Taco Night. It was the first event that we ever hosted before we opened, and it was right when we launched the crowdfunding campaign. It was like a yoga and wine night, and so did yoga. We made the pitch, and then we all had like iPads at the door, and we were like waiting for people to give us $1,800, which was like a founding membership for a year, you know, to swipe their cards, and like, you know, we were so excited, and nobody paid us. Everyone just like, they were like, this is a great idea, we'll see you later. And we like literally like we walked down to the river. If you're familiar with the Twin Cities, like we walked down to the Mississippi River and like had the saddest tacos we've ever had in our lives. But it was like that pivotal moment, like that's like a founder moment where you realize like this is going to take a lot of work, and we are asking people to invest in themselves, invest in us. This thing doesn't exist. It's going to take, you know, 7 to 10 touches before we're going to get someone to convert. It's not going to be like a,
Yeah.
you know, real transactional, like you're buying a, you know, friendship bracelet. Like we're asking you to invest in like a space, right? And then like prove that you're going to use it. And again, like 5 years ago, people weren't co-working at the rate that they are now. Like it was a new concept. So it was a big leap for us. But it really put us to the test. It taught me a lot about sales, and even having been like what I would say like a decent salesperson my entire life, like this really like took it up a notch. So I don't know, someday I'll be like writing books on sales, I think, just having that experience. But you know, crowdfunding is hard. And I think a lot of people think of it like a crock pot, you know, you like set it and forget it and like, you know, check back in and there'll be money, you know. Magic Money Angels is what co-founder of and CEO of I Fund Women, which is the platform we used. She always says like there are no magic money angels. Like there's not just like
Yeah, they don't
elves
pop up.
like sitting around with like money. Like, it's like you really have to sell the product. And so we spent a lot of time doing that. And it taught us a lot about what we needed to do. It's a harder sell getting people to believe in themselves, getting people to invest in themselves. It's an emotional experience coming into our spaces. And so it really cracked the door wide open for us. What crowdfunding did, and for those of you who determine that crowdfunding is the route you're going to, like, hit me up. I'm more than happy to give you coaching. I like coach a masterclass on this now because we were so successful. I think we're still like one of the top two crowdfunding campaigns on the iFund Women platform.
Wow. Could you talk about that a little bit, the iFund Women platform?
Yeah, iFund Women was co-founded by women. It's a crowdfunding platform like a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo. But I would say their biggest differentiator is the support and community that comes with joining iFund Women. So they offer coaching, classes, webinars. You get one-on-one coaching with people, and real resources and tools. I've crowdfunded on all sorts of platforms before and have supported many founders on a number of different platforms. And what I can say is they're all fine. But the best one, I think, is iFund Women because of the resources that they provide around you to be successful. I think a lot of times, again, like being a founder is really isolating, and putting yourself out there on a crowdfunding campaign can feel really scary because your like ideas out there and you're watching like money tick up. And it really proves, like, do people want this or not? And so having kind of a support team and resources around you who can help you do everything from like creating a logo, shooting your video, writing your script, like all of that stuff takes time and effort, and having a team to support you is amazing. So go Karen and her team for creating that platform. We were on like the beta platform when when we got there. And when we first launched, they used to do like a pre-call with every founder just to check in with folks, like how are you going to use the platform and how can we be helpful? And the number that I called was Karen Cons, the CEO. I thought they had been like around forever. I thought I was going to get some sort of like help desk or like someone, in like an offshore call center or something. And it was like truly the CEO. And we've been friends ever since. So I, fully support her work.
Sounds like
That's
we need to
awesome.
get Karen on here soon. I love to have her
Yes,
and hear
I'll
the
make the
story
intro.
of that. I mean, that sounds amazing. Along your journey, I mean, I hear this market research you're doing, sales, marketing, really organically connecting with your customers and getting their feedback.
Mm-hmm.
While you're crowdfunding, you mentioned, that when you launched, you already had 100 or 50 or so, memberships already sold. So how did you go about selling those memberships prior to launching as well, and really getting, proving a concept before you would even raise the capital?
Yeah, so we pre-sold memberships for crowdfunding. So that was the reward you would get when you were buying in.
Okay.
And that was, we encourage our, as we're franchising too, like we're encouraging our franchisees, if financing is a challenge, like crowdfunding can be a great way for you to like prove concept and raise some early capital. It made us cash flow positive much faster. It allowed us to have a little bit more flexibility from a cash flow and revenue perspective. We sold basically only annual memberships through the crowdfunding campaign so that we would have like more capital on the upfront. Then we started selling monthly memberships once we opened our doors.
That's really cool. Really great concept. I do recall us talking about it a little bit as well as you kind of after your launch and really talking about the concept of your business model, starting early on with this yearly memberships, but you also mentioned now, I think you have a virtual membership as well. And so can you talk about a little bit the offerings throughout the membership and kind of the things that people come back for the community outside just the physical space?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have, two different types of physical memberships. One for like limited use, someone who's in the space about 2 times a month. Then we have an unlimited use, folks who, want to use the space as much as they can. They can pay both monthly and annually for both plans. And then every year we run, certain like 6-month promos and that kind of thing. What I love that the pandemic taught us was a lot about how people want to gather and connect virtually. And we had been talking, prior to the pandemic, had been talking about what digital community looked like. We had a number of different groups that we had used, Slack and Facebook groups and, just ways for folks to connect outside of the space. And, you're not always in the space when a specific another member is in the space. So it was a way for our members to connect with one another. And we had explored lots of different tools, but the pandemic really, again, exacerbated the need for people to connect with one another. And so within 24 hours of, closing our physical spaces due to COVID, we launched a digital community. And how that looked was every day we had a virtual event. And every day there was something. We were checking in with members. We were hosting curated content. We were bringing in speakers and panelists and all kinds of different things, places, just places for people to be to co-work together virtually, right? That we were all sitting in our kitchens and living rooms and bathrooms and wherever else we were figuring out where to work in our own homes. And it was a really interesting experience. We doubled our membership in the first 4 months of launching that platform. And it was a way for us to test, do people want digital content? Now, since then, we've learned a lot about the types of content people want to engage with, what times of day work best for content and connectivity, how people want to do networking online. Do people like asynchronous versus synchronous content? And we have it all now in a total playbook for it. So we spent most of 2020 kind of betaing, what we could with a digital platform that was very rudimentary. We started building our own in 2021, realized we're not a tech company, and decided that was not the right route for us, and launched a white label product in early 2022, something that we had been using, but just really went all in with it in 2020, 2021, 2022 timeframe. And really since then have been launching, a number of series around educational content for entrepreneurs, leaders, building equitable businesses, building equitable spaces, being a productive part of the workforce, those types of things. And they all kind of culminate in both on-demand series that are made for bite-size consumption, things that you can take in really quickly, as well as action. And then we also have live virtual events that we host in tandem with our in-person events. So it's now become kind of its own space. So you don't have to be a member of our physical communities to get access to our digital community. We're working right now with a lot of municipalities and states that are really interested in supporting their entrepreneurs, specifically folks of color and women, because they know that a lot of the content that's out there for entrepreneurial development and workforce development is taught by white men. And so how can we, show up in different ways and support people with facilitators that look and feel like the communities that they want to serve? And it's been really exciting to have those conversations. And we have a couple of counties here in the Twin Cities metro area that are subscribed, and we've got a growing number of members. And so between our two physical locations and our digital community, we have about 1,000 members.
That's awesome. So you said you started the crowdfunding in 2017. When did you actually launch the physical space? And then I know the pandemic happened. So was it right near that time, or when did that?
Yeah, so we opened, the crowdfunding campaign launched in October of 2017, and then we opened our physical doors in March of 2018. So it was within, 5 months. We were quick and scrappy. We designed and built the whole thing within 4 months, I think it was, once we knew that. I actually remember we have a video of us signing the lease because we were so excited. It was the first thing that, we did in November. It was right around Thanksgiving time. But as soon as we had hit $100,000 in the crowdfunding campaign, and we really knew that was something we were gonna do it, we signed the lease and went off to build, and the rest is history. We opened our second location in 2020, 6 weeks before the pandemic, so it was before we knew that was coming.
Yeah,
I can imagine.
But that's amazing, though. You mean to double your membership over the pandemic, and the platform, connecting folks and taking it virtual. I love that whole idea. I'm pitching you the metaverse. Y'all might need a Coven metaverse here soon.
If you can explain to me what the metaverse is, then we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I got you.
During that time, Alex, hearing you talk about doubling your membership during the pandemic, I'm curious, kind of like, I think over your journey since 2017, what are some of the insights you really realized about building community? And what do you think you and your team have done exceptionally well that keep your community engaged?
Oh, that's a great question. We learned so much when we went digital. I think there's a difference between like good programming and great programming, and some of that is honestly it's about the feeling that you have when you come into a space, physical or digital. It's not just, you know, what am I going to learn today and am I getting enough out of this? It's like, how do I feel when I leave this space? In our physical communities, a lot of our members talk about like, I feel different when I leave here because I feel like I got stuff done. I feel like I was cared for. I feel cared for. Like what a weird word to use in the workplace, right? We don't talk about like somebody took care of me today. But that's really what we do in our physical spaces. And so, you know, taking those elements of what worked in our physical space and bringing that into the digital community, like general check-ins or just something without an agenda, but just, hey, how are you feeling today? What's bringing you joy today? What's striking you? What's inspiring to you today? Like those types of conversations that are left for open-ended discussion are made for connectivity and matchmaking. It helps create those like serendipitous moments that happen at the water cooler, which was what everybody was missing in the physical community, and bringing that to the digital space. It took us a little bit of time to like figure out what exactly that alchemy looked like. But after a while, you kind of like get the hang of it. It's like, oh, these are the types of questions that we want to ask people in the digital community to like inspire connection and belonging. You asked the other question kind of around like how do you keep people connected. I think, you know, people here, like I said, people here feel really cared for. We had a member approach us the other day, and she was like, I've never felt like somebody is taking care of me in the workplace before, and like to come in and have like a shitty day and like have someone like help me, like they see that like our team senses that, right? They're intuitive people, and so they're like, we got to get this person some tea, like, oh, maybe I'll bring them a blanket, they look a little cold. They're like, hey, it looks like they're like celebrating something, maybe we should like pop open a bottle of champagne or some like sparkling apple juice or something. Like people just, our team really cares, and I think that's what matters, is like hospitality isn't just about like a warm and friendly face at the door. It's like somebody gets you because, like I said, like you spend more time at work, more time doing work in your lifetime than you do with your family, than when you do in your own home. And so if we can create a space where you're not dreading showing up to here more than, than anything else, like that's a win.
That's so true. I think, that, and also like that keeps people coming back and engage because, I feel like a lot of the stuff you're doing, you got engagement and you have connectivity and it's authentic. And your members feel that and they keep coming back for that. So, I mean, I'm really excited for a lot of the things you have going. I know you mentioned earlier franchising and expanding. What does your growth trajectory look like? And what is that franchising model? And what's your target markets you're looking to go into?
Yeah, we franchising has like been on our radar for a while, and after, putting together that playbook of like what does it take to create a really hospitable and inclusive community, it made sense to franchise because we do a lot of connecting to the resources that are here in the Twin Cities, but we want folks who love, Louisville. We want people who love Nashville. We want people who love Milwaukee and Denver and all of the places that we're interested in going into. And who know those resources and can make those connective tissue points. Like I can't do the type of like, wheeling and dealing that I do here in other communities. And so, we're really looking for people who are passionate about their communities and passionate about the resources they can share there. Really we're exploring kind of underdog cities. We're having lots of conversations with the cities I kind of just named. We talk about underdog cities as places that, are maybe deemed flyover country. It's basically like anything that's not like New York, essentially. Or like New York City proper, or like Manhattan, like what we really like when you think about New York, like we may end up in like Queens, like that's an underdog city or an underdog neighborhood. Like what we love about finding spaces that need connective communities, need inclusive spaces, need places for convening for a diverse group of people. Like that's where we want to be. And we're finding that, even just having launched our, franchise announcement in the last like month or so, we've had like dozens and dozens of inquiries from people who are saying in these exact cities, like, hey, like I would love to open here. And so we're really, we're down the path with a handful of folks and excited to see where this goes. Our trajectory is, we really want to focus on, opening 3 next year so that we can really help them advance, help them grow, help them feel supported holistically, and then learn from that experience too. So like, the witching hours that we were hosting for our members, we'll be hosting with our franchisees to understand like, how can we do better as franchisors? How can we support you mostly? Because of our marketing background, we do that really well. Because of our design background, designing inclusive spaces is really helpful and supportive. And we've been coaching entrepreneurs for the last 6 years. So like, this is a really great opportunity for us to take that skill that we've had with members and apply that to our franchisees. So our hope is to open 3 in the next year, and then, the rest is history. We really hope to kind of explode this thing and help people with kind of by providing the playbook and operations tools that they need to be successful entrepreneurs.
Wow, that's exciting. A lot of things in the fold, and I'm really excited to kind of see that growth trajectory and seeing these across the country, and especially those, like you said, those flyover cities, and really, having this connected communities throughout the country. So that's really exciting to hear. Before we get to the fire round, so a couple of hot seat questions, and kind of outside of the franchising piece. What are like some big goals for the Coven? What are some of the next steps you're really looking for outside of this expansion through the franchising?
Yeah, well, one, we're fundraising right now, so we're hopefully going to close this round really soon in early Q1. We're raising $2.5 million. It'll be our first priced round. We've previously raised 1.6. But it was kind of like right before COVID and in the middle of COVID. And so a lot of that became kind of survival dollars and test money for our, for the digital platform. What I think is exciting is to like really put this money into overdrive of like, thrival dollars, like building our team, doing what we wish that we could have done in the pandemic, with kind of team right sizing and finding the right people for franchise development and beyond. So that's like really where our focus is. As we grow, we're also really excited to partner with more corporate folks. We've had a lot of success with corporates here locally, sponsoring content, sponsoring memberships for folks. We've offered a 5-for-1 community funded membership since the very beginning. So every membership that we sell funds somebody else's membership to make sure that, our space is socioeconomically diverse. We've to date given away more than 400 memberships for free over the last 5 years of being open. And it's been just, such a joy to see folks who wouldn't normally get access to a space, like co-working space, really thrive. And what we see is it like creates an ecosystem or a pipeline for not just paying members, but paying leaders, who, go on, meet their next job or career or make their business become real or are able to finally pay themselves and invest in their co-working space down the road. So we're really lucky to have such a great crew of folks. And I'm so proud of our staff and our team. They're a phenomenal group of people that make everyone here feel welcome.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I got one question I want to get in selfishly. It's a metaverse question. So as we, continue to build out and build a community in the metaverse, it's what our whole goal is with Brainstem, is to get students into the metaverse and build a community there. And with more people working from home, how do you feel about that? I mean, you're building an online community. That's a big part of, what you all are doing. But how do you feel about those people like actually, Coven in the metaverse, like co-working in the metaverse with people who are doing similar work as you? You can have those conversations, bounce ideas off of. It's almost like a richer, work environment when I'm surrounded by marketing folks and we are all getting, different inquiries from, our various jobs, but we can all talk about those and, pass that knowledge and those ideas around.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's amazing. And we should totally, like, someone should franchise a Coven in the metaverse. That would be amazing. I think, it's interesting to think about that. So we have our digital community is like, it's more than just what happens in the synchronous space where like people are chatting back and forth or like reading the feed or connecting with in the DMs, right? So it's like, it's also a place where people are learning with content that's on demand that they can watch anytime and kind of at their convenience, because we know how busy entrepreneurs are, and particularly women are.
Yeah.
So I think it's an interesting concept. And I think there's something unique to the ability to talk to people all around the world who, are like-minded. Our digital community is also a marketing tool, right? It's like you don't have to be in physical proximity to a coven in order to hang out with us. But when we do have a coven in that community, you might be the first to sign up for a physical membership. And so those are things that we think about as, people are always going to want to meet in person too. So I love the idea of thinking about like, what could this look in like a real virtual sense? And, then how do you think about physical and psychological safety in the metaverse? I think that's a real like open conversation right now that people are having is like, how do you protect your identity? How do you protect, how do you make sure that it's a safe space if anybody can come in? And I think that's something that we think a lot about in our physical spaces is like creating physical and psychological safety, because those are the tools. Those are like the things that are needed to generate a bias for risk taking and action, which allows you to start your own business and advance in your career. So those are some things that I would be like curious around, like how do you create that in the metaverse? And I'd love to know people who are having those conversations, because I think that'd be I don't know how much I could contribute because I live in the real world, but but I'd be interested to hear more about it.
Yeah, I'm 1 foot in and 1 foot out.
Alex, I have a quick follow-up. I know you just mentioned, some of the fundraising piece, right? And I don't want to glance over that. One of the biggest questions we get from a lot of entrepreneurs is raising capital. And you just, quietly said you raised $1.5 or $1.7 million for your first round of funding. And, you always have the conversations, particularly around Black and brown founders and especially women founders raising venture capital. What that first round of funding you did and kind of being on the fundraising trail again, what were some of those early insights you learned from those, from those conversations? And, what did you do effectively to raise those dollars and sell your vision? Because I think there's always something that for, entrepreneurs or founders are looking to learn to get better at in that department.
Yeah. Well, gosh, so much from that first round of funding. So we raised our first round. It was kind of technically a pre-seed round on a convertible note, which is basically debt that converts to equity. I love talking in like real language to people because no one knows what any of that means. But when you first start out, I certainly didn't. But we did a couple of accelerators. One was in San Francisco, or one was remote in San Francisco, and the other one was full time in San Francisco. So for about 12 weeks, we flew back and forth between Minneapolis and San Fran to meet investors. It was Jason Calacanis's launch accelerator. It was a great program. I love his philosophy around fundraising is to not do it for very long. It's to like get it done so you can get back to work, because the goal of being an entrepreneur shouldn't be to raise money forever, but it should be to do the work. And so I appreciated that perspective going in there. And so we got a chance to meet with hundreds of VCs and investors. I think over the course of 2019, we spoke to about 300 investors, took that many meetings and outreach opportunities. We got about 13 yeses out of that. So I don't know, that's a pretty decent hit rate when you talk about, getting money as a woman and as a Black woman. Yeah. Not too bad. But it was a slog. And in 2019, if you remember, like WeWork imploded in August, and actually the S1 came out like the day that we flew out to San Francisco for the first time. And so we're like on the plane reading this thing going, holy shit, now we're supposed to go raise money, and like they're like literally lighting it on fire. Like, how are we supposed to do this? And we got there and we got laughed out of rooms. I was there for the first 6 weeks. My co-founder, Bethany, stayed for the second half of the 6 weeks because I came back to really focus on corporate sales here. And, we're lucky enough to have founders that can do that, right? So like we were a team for a little bit, and then, there was like a moment where I was like, I got to stay back because we have to make money. We have to, drive revenue. And I know a lot of founders who are solo founders or even, just have one co-founder, like don't have the luxury of doing that. So getting in and getting out is important. But like I said, we got laughed out of rooms. And so we just had to find the right people. A lot of it was putting ourselves in situations to be ready to get investment. So like even, speaking at events, talking to as many people as possible, asking for intros every time we met somebody, like those were the ways that we like chipped away. It basically becomes a numbers game, at some point. and yeah, I mean, a lot of it like eats away at your soul. You like doubt yourself with that many no's, but eventually you got to just get used to the rejection. And like, it's like artists, like they're used to hearing no or critiques, and you have to know what to take and what to leave. I always, my co-founder Bethany and I were on the road doing that for quite a while, and a lot of what we kind of determined was like most of these investors have never started their own business before. So to have the audacity to tell me how to run my business, like when I'm in the middle of it and I'm sitting here like showing you a model that can be profitable or is profitable, and it's not of interest to you, it's like, well, okay, like moving on to the next one. So we've been really lucky to find some really great people by putting ourselves in situations where we can meet the good ones, and a lot of folks have been really supportive of the work that we're doing. They believe in this mission, they believe in us as co-founders, and we're really grateful for it.
Yeah, it's critical. Not only to have the investors, but to have the right investors. And like I love the piece about preparation and you creating relationships before you're ready to fundraise, because like those are the type of relationships that take time, and also you never know how they will cultivate. So those are great factors, and I love that hear the kind of that journey that you went through.
Yeah, we ate no's for breakfast. That's what we say.
You got to get used to it, right? You're gonna have your nose, right? And it's gonna be along the customer journey as well. And so, like, you have to almost, in a sense, believe in your vision and become numb to that word.
Yeah. Cheery nose, eat your cheery nose.
Champions.
All right. Well, we had a couple hot seat questions before we let you go. Quick, short answers, some fun questions. But let me know. Are you ready to go?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. So what's your favorite book recommendation and maybe why?
Oh, I love books. I read The Vanishing Half this year. That was like kind of, as a founder, I know a lot of founders like struggle to find like fiction books that they can dive into. I love The Vanishing Half. I thought it was a really unique and interesting story. I would say like business book wise, actually, there's a book called The Mom Test. It's by a researcher, and it's about how to ask better research questions. It's like questions that you could ask your mom and get like a real answer out of. Because if you ask your mom, like, do you like my business? Of course, she's going to say yes because you're her baby. But the book is really small and it's really digestible, and it has really actionable ways that you can do better market research and market testing as a founder without that background. So that's not my background. I'm lucky enough to have two co-founders that is their background. But I always recommend that to founders. It's called The Mom Test.
Sounds like a great read right there. We'll check that out. All right. What is the best piece of advice or a recent piece of advice that you've been given that you kind of live by?
We heard from this is kind of gross, but I'm going to say it anyways because I think it's kind of a funny one. My co-founder Bethany and I were in San Francisco, and one of the investors said, "If you're going to eat shit, don't nibble." And it just means to get the hard part done, and like I was saying before, like fundraising is really hard. And your job as a founder should not be to fundraise forever. So like get in, get out, make efficiency your friend. So I don't know, it's kind of a gross one, but it sticks.
It does stick. All right. Here's a quick fun one. If you had unlimited money, what would be your ideal getaway or vacation?
Oh my God, literally anywhere warm. I'm in the Twin Cities and it's like 6 degrees today. So anywhere like south of the Mason-Dixon line. Take it.
I'm from Wisconsin and I'm not envious of you at all right now.
No, I would take anywhere near an ocean. I love being around water. It's just calming. And yeah, as a founder, you need some calm in your life.
Agree. Likewise. All right. So if you had to build the ultimate entrepreneur, what two people would you put together?
Ooh. Oprah.
Ooh.
I don't know. It'd be like a toss up between like Oprah, Michelle Obama, and Beyonce. Like you need like the like you've got like the Ivy League, you have like the like performance and like business brain, and then you've got this like entertainment maven. Like, I don't know how you like that would be like just such a brilliant entrepreneur. They're all entrepreneurs in their own right. So
I'm about to laugh, Alex, because I read that you love your husband, your kids, and Oprah and Beyonce in no particular order, and so I totally expect you to say Oprah and Beyonce. Right?
Yeah. Well, you know, depends on the day.
Oh, that's hilarious. All right, last question. And this is no scientific answer on this, but you know, are there any like a secret sauce or key ingredients that you think are critical to building a unicorn?
Oh, you know, okay, I'm gonna have to look up who said this and I'll send it to you later. But there was someone who was talking about don't be a unicorn, but be a dragon. And, you know, dragons are gritty and they're the ones who are going to get through a recession. They're the ones who get through a pandemic. We saw so many like unicorns like crash and burn, and they're still crashing and burning. We're all seeing it and witnessing it live and in the press. So I don't know. I would say like be a dragon. I think the like alchemy of that, whoever said that, it's about grit. It's about tenacity. It's about like, you know, withholding a little bit, you know, like before you're, you know, like, you know how like dragons like breathe fire as if they're real, right? Like I know the science behind dragonry, dragonology, you know, like they hold back before they breathe fire. Like, I feel like, you know, you have to have a sense of like, you know, restraint, to not burn down the city. You know, if you're going to survive these moments of, you know, tight cash flow and that type of thing. So, you know, be gritty, be tough skinned, you know, and you got to get through it. I think like to be a unicorn, like good for you. You threw a whole bunch of money and hopefully you get to be profitable at some point. But, you know, dragons get to profitability, through grit and tenacity.
Ooh, so well said. I think that defines so many entrepreneurs like in the middle of the country that you're describing, those underdog markets and cities and founders who don't get all those upfront venture capitalist dollars. And so I think it's so well defined. I think it's probably
we don't have that soft, like glossy hair. Like, like look at us. We got like tough skin and like thick coats, and we're farm people here.
So well said.
What Kanye said, the Wendy said they make them straighten up their hats because we know they soft.
I love it. Well, Alex, we are super grateful for your time and your story today. We're excited for what you're building, and thank you so much for spending some time with us.
It's fun to chill with y'all.
Thank you.
All right. To the next one.
I put in work, diverse. A lot of work.
Grateful to be kind of at the
Got on my
I have like this 65-year-old
make it work. I put in time.